Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Diane Hayden, publisher of Natural Nutmeg magazine, and welcome to our weekly podcast where I interview our expert writers and contributors for Natural Nutmeg on topics ranging from natural medicine, green living, holistic psychotherapy, spirituality, and how to live a healthier, more holistic lifestyle. I'm excited to have with me today Debra Franklin. She is the owner and founder of Progressive Psychotherapy. And I'm really excited to have her. She just recently wrote an article for us in Natural Nutmeg that you can find on our website, naturalnutmeg.com. And she is a LCSW. She created Progressive Psychotherapy and has 33 years of experience and is licensed in Connecticut and New York to provide therapy and is available as a coach for other locations, currently offering video and phone services. She also developed the Heart Path Therapy approach and offers groups and training for practitioners in Heart Path Therapy. So thanks so much for being with us today, Deborah. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Awesome. So we definitely want to get into heart path therapy and everything we can learn about that. But I always like to start these calls with just a little bit of background about yourself and how you got started in psychotherapy. I think people are always interested in what kind of led you down that path.
hmm Thank you. That's great. I have always been interested in psychology. It's in my chart. It's
Yeah.
strong in my chart, along with spirituality, actually. So that's why this connection is happening at all, right?
Yep.
So, and so I was reading Edgar Casey when I was 12 years old, and wrote a paper on Carl Jung when I was 12, and doing all kinds of experimenting with spirituality and psychic sciences. And little by little, I actually thought I was going to be a teacher, and I was talked out of it and that's when I said, okay, well, my other love is psychology. So that's how I got into psychology. And I definitely had my own healing to do, which is, I think, is what's helped gift me with what I can do to help others, because I went through my own process of having my own struggles, and found an amazing therapist who was also, he was a psychoanalyst, but he was a highly spiritual psychoanalyst, which was very unique, especially back in that day when I was some years ago, many years ago. And so I went through my own process, and of course, I just wanted to be able to help others similarly. So, and that's how I gradually moved into becoming a psychotherapist.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also think it's really interesting how some people go down the path of being more of what I would call a holistic psychotherapist versus just your traditional, you know, path of psychotherapy. And it sounds like you were saying, you were just drawn to the more spiritual side of it and, seeing the person as a whole and that kind of thing versus, more traditional psychotherapy. So I'm curious just to, as we get into this call to learn more about how you practice and all of that.
Yeah, thank you. hmm Yeah, I
Awesome.
definitely have been studying a lot of the more esoteric, spiritually oriented psychological approaches for many years, and that's why I developed what I developed, and doing what I'm doing.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's talk about that. So one of the cool things you do is called Heart Path. So I guess let's start from the beginning. What exactly is that and how do you practice that way?
So I developed this technique. It really is an integration of approaches, and it's things that I studied over the years, and many workshops that I took that were experiential, that helped with my own healing, actually, along with the therapist I mentioned. And it really involves, first and foremost, the wisdom from the sacred traditions, which, and many people who I'm sure read your magazine perhaps already know that when you really look at the root of the sacred traditions, they all have a very similar philosophy, which is
Hmm.
about love, peace, harmony, becoming who you are in this beautiful way, realizing the beauty that you have, seeing your gifts so that you then know your purpose and are inspired to contribute to the world in that way. So So that's when I decided to say, I'm going to put all this stuff together and call it Heart Path Therapy. And it involves also inner child work, which is extremely strong and effective, guided imagery, but it's also the way that it's done, which is really important. So one reason I called it Heart Path Therapy is because one of the ingredients has to be a therapist that's healed to the point of being very loving with their client. If love is not there, it's just not going to work very well, at least in terms of the relationship being there to help. So love is an important ingredient, and also the client's motivation to heal.
Of course.
And if you have those two things, there's a lot that can be done with these approaches. The sacred wisdom involves things like the therapist cleaning the office between clients, whether it's using burning copal or sage or spraying some essential oils. I mean, there's ideas, there are philosophies that go with each one from the sacred traditions. Copal is a little more protective and so forth. I'm not going to get into all those details, but cleaning one's space and offering an environment, obviously, that's conducive to healing is also important, as well as the love and the belief in that sense of higher power, spirit, whatever you want to call it. It's also prayer. Prayer is like super powerful. So just bringing all that in along with all the transformational psychological approaches. Family constellations is also one that some people may be familiar with. It's very dynamic and energetic. There's energy psychology. So it's bringing in a whole lot of elements that are about transformation along with the spiritual.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. I think just the aspect of, cleaning your office in between clients, I think would probably be something that most people wouldn't even think of to do, or, realize that you as a psychotherapist does that. But for people, especially for people who are sensitive to different energies, I could imagine that that would make a big difference if a psychotherapist doesn't do that and someone comes in after, another session has happened with a different client, and you may not even be aware of why you feel uncomfortable, but it's because there's those residual energies that are still there.
Exactly. And I can feel like if I go into someone else's office and there was a really angry client there, I'm like, whoa, what happened here? Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, really? There was someone there that was just angry. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, anybody, I mean, if as we become who we are, we're all deeply intuitive and can feel it. So,
Right. Right. Just whether or not, some of us are that in tune to it or not, even
exactly.
subconsciously, I think people feel it.
Exactly.
Um, we're specifically talking about in-person, therapy. I'm just curious, because of the time that we're in right now, are you seeing clients in person, or are you doing most of your work virtually?
Oh, great question. Yes, I'm doing it all virtually,
Okay.
and it's working great. And people can choose between video or phone. I do guided imagery either way, and it's just as powerful. Sometimes I have to say to them, "Hey, can you get some sage if you don't have
Yep.
any, or maybe
Right.
you can light a candle." I normally would have an altar in my office, actually, so I might suggest that idea to them. So, in other words, that would be the only difference. Would be them setting up what the tools that are
That they need.
needed
Yeah.
for the process. That's all are beneficial anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I've talked to a lot of different practitioners during, this whole time of dealing with COVID. And I think that a lot of people have found that they're, they're able to reinvent their practice almost by going to a virtual platform. And it really has not, you know, not really affected them at all. In fact, it's for many people, it's enhanced their practice in a way that they probably didn't realize. So there's, there's some positive benefits of all of this that we've had to deal with too. And I think, taking people realizing that they can do their work virtually, and also the client realizing it too, is one of them.
Oh yeah, because I was doing it before COVID, and there was definitely a lot of people who there were some people that really liked it, some people that were okay with it, and there was a huge group of people that didn't like it. But now it's as if everybody's adjusting to a whole new world
Sure.
and are okay with it. You know,
Yeah.
better
Right.
to have the therapy than no therapy. So,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
and I think people
Um,
are realizing it can work. as long as you have
Oh,
a Wi-Fi.
of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, realistically, I'm the type of person who loves live events and loves doing things live and that kind of thing. But realistically, there shouldn't be any reason why it can't be as effective from a virtual platform like what we're doing right now. I mean, we're still seeing each other, interacting, that kind of thing. And I've even done therapy by phone and have had that be very effective too. So there's lots of ways I think that people can still get the help that they need, even from a virtual perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the type of clients that you
Mhm.
typically see. I'm curious. I'm sure that it's vast. I mean, I'm sure there's a wide range of different people that that are drawn to you or that you tend to work with. I'm just curious, um, is there a particular type of client or someone who might be dealing with a particular type of issue that you see more frequently, or that you feel like you're more effective with, or it really kind of just runs the gamut?
Yeah, well, I've worked with all ages, including families and couples, but the type of clients too would be ones that are open to spirituality, beyond obviously a rigid religion, and open to some of these ideas. If they're not open to that, or at least to the concept of prayer, that to me is like a very important piece. I just find it more limited,
Hmm.
not impossible, but more limited. So my prayer really is to find, because, my prayer is to find the right matches, the people that I can benefit the most, because other people that want a different situation, it probably makes more sense that they see somebody else that maybe isn't as spiritual, or it would just be better for everybody, I think. So I've had great matches. People who see my website and resonate with that always end up being the best matches. So
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, I'm sure the energy really comes through of who you are and what you do through your website, and people will know whether or not that's something that would resonate with them. And like you say, I mean, it's important, I think, to really feel a connection with your psychotherapist, just like it's important to have a connection, in my mind, with your massage therapist.
mhm.
And it's, because it's a very personal thing, whether you're working with the body or you're working with the mind, and the person's thought processes or things like that. Not only do you have to be comfortable with that person, but I feel like the more there is a connection there, the deeper work you are able to do.
Yeah, exactly. And their willingness to go deep into themselves too is usually there, because I talk about that on the website, about going to the root of whatever it is you're bringing in. Because I'm not about, treating symptoms or giving drugs, and, or, not that I can prescribe anything, but, I'm not about pushing on that. So unless it's an emergency or severe situation, and then I would consider it a temporary issue. So people who have come depressed or anxious, or relationship struggles, those are many of the types of situations I see, as well as the personality of being willing to, yeah, look at yourself, meditate on the situation, do inner child work, guided imagery, and yeah, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what would someone typically expect, let's say, from a first session of working with you? What are some of the things that you introduce the person to?
Oh, well, I generally, usually first and often the second session are the ones where I'm exploring what it is they're coming in for, what exactly the issues are, and also getting some family history to look at, to get a sense of where all of that comes, from. And yeah, that's basically how I start. I get their philosophy on spirituality too, so I know what I'm working with in that area.
Yep, exactly. I think, and lots of times I feel like, because I have a background in life coaching and I've done some coaching, I feel like often the issue or problem that they're coming to you with is usually not what the deep down rooted issue is. It usually presents as something else.
Yeah, it's It depends. Yeah, it can be certainly framed various ways. So in that way, it can look different, but the emotion behind it is what's similar, I think,
True.
to the root, right? But yes, but sometimes you have to go through a couple layers of what is really going on, what is the feeling, and then connect to that. Because I often have people doing guided imagery facing the uncomfortable emotion behind what they're presenting and
Right.
noticing the sensations, and then that taking us somewhere, whether it's inner child or creating something else with it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You're exactly right. I think it's absolutely the emotion, and sometimes it's the emotion is directed at somebody else. Like in a
Right.
relationship situation, you might be angry at your partner, but
Hmm.
when you really do the work, you probably will discover that you might be angry at yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Or you're angry, really, or your spouse is sitting in for your father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yes, but
Or mother
unfortunately,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah. But I really appreciate you bringing out that in about anger at the self or something with the self, because really it does all come down to that, doesn't it? In terms of
Yep.
self-esteem and how do we feel about ourselves. If you're judging other people, I'm sure you're judging yourself. So thank you for mentioning that, because that's really important. I work a lot with that, helping people's self-esteem and certainly learning how to have compassion for the parts of oneself helps then compassion in relationship to others. So,
Yeah. And it's not easy. I mean, it took me many, many years to come to a place where I finally understood, and I don't know if the words could admit to myself or could, be okay with, okay, I have this emotion, anger, let's say, and I'm directing it right now at my partner, but really I'm angry about something that that either happened to me a long time ago, whether, like you said, it was with a parent or even like a job, or even just myself, like parts of my personality, and he was just triggering that. But it's difficult to really be able to see, like, okay, the anger is really not at about something he's doing, but it's almost like a mirror to show me something that I need to work on in myself.
exactly. Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that too. Yes. All the things that we think are, this is frustrating about this person or my friend or whatever. It's always a mirror about something to look at in ourselves. What are we frustrated in ourselves, right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, but that's not easy for people to see, I don't think. And I think it takes a long time of, whether it's reading books about subjects like this that helped me a lot, or even, like, of course, ongoing working with psychotherapists like yourself, meditation, that kind of
yeah,
thing. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to
mhm,
realize that it's got to come back to you. And
exactly. And it's
yep,
so valuable if people are just willing to sit with that emotion that's behind it
right,
and really look at it in detail and just ask. You can ask, there's many questions one can ask, which whether it's when is the earliest time in my life that I saw that. So you can, and that would be a start of working with the part of yourself that's probably been rejected
hmm,
and under getting to a place of understanding and compassion, which is a process that should be, of course, with a coach or therapist, um, so that it's supported. I don't suggest people just doing this on their own who haven't even tried it before or
right.
don't have a therapist, but it's a very
I
beautiful
agree. I
process.
agree. Do not try this at home.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Is that what you would mean when you refer to inner child work, or is that something else?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Um, so once one gets to the root of this emotion, usually it's like a memory. It could be being yelled at by dad, or it could usually it's a repetitive thing that was traumatic in some way. And so then it's about sitting with that inner child, which is the person as a child, of course, could be 4 years old, 5 years old, whatever, and creating a distance that feels safe. I also, but even before that, though, I'm all do a process where I'm asking people to bring in supports, whether it's a guardian angel or in me there or anything that's supportive before I even get there. But any case, once I'm there with them, then it's a matter of just staying at an appropriate distance that's tolerable. This isn't about recreating a traumatic situation. We don't want to do that.
Hmm.
And then with the supports, and then just sitting there and being very present. And it's amazing what can happen. I have the person communicate to their inner child, but the main thing is feeling the inner child and getting to that place of complete understanding, and where you can spontaneously feel compassion. Because initially, most people don't like this part of themselves. They had to push it away to survive because their parents, or caretakers, as the case may be, didn't understand. The caretakers didn't understand this part of themselves. It's not blaming anyone, but they
Right.
didn't understand that part. So how could they understand it in their child, right? Or their own self-criticism? The child just takes that on. That's all. So, um, so it's about like, wow, and then being able to empathize with the inner child and validate his or her feelings. And once that's very heartfelt, it's amazing the compassion that comes through. It just can't be an intellectual process. And I have to emphasize that, because that happens accidentally if people are trying to do it on their own, or maybe there's a practitioner that hasn't quite fully grasped how to do it with someone, with a client. So sometimes it's too intellectual, and it doesn't. And then, because I've had clients come to me saying, well, I've done inner child with it and it didn't work. I'm like, yeah, but how did you do it? So anyway,
Right, right. No, it makes perfect sense. And I think, sadly, most people just don't want to sit with that. Like, we're so used to, our lives are busy, we're running here and there, we've got a million, tasks and responsibilities, we've got families, that kind of thing. Most people are like, who has the time to, meditate or sit and really be with an emotion? And so the fact that we don't do that, or we haven't done that for so many years, when you start doing it, it can be a really scary thing, because it's like you're not used to feeling, is really what it comes down to, I think.
Exactly. No, you hit the nail on the head. And thank you for mentioning that, because that also just made me think about how our systems are set up that way, especially schools. I mean, can be so naturally imaginative and filled with love, which is like the most important thing in life, connecting
Hmm.
to nature. Those are things that are so about peace and joy, inner peace and joy. And then we come to school and we're told that's not important, basically. Just
Right.
math, science, read this, read that, do your English. And it's not very, usually, sadly, it's usually not very interesting either. And then kids gradually and that's how we start to lose the part of ourselves that are actually the most important thing in life: being creative, imaginative, being filled with love, creating harmony and peace. Why don't they make that part of the curriculum at least somewhere?
Well, that is a whole other topic that we could probably talk about for hours, like what
But
should be in school curriculum, for sure.
yeah, that's true.
Totally, totally. But I think that, I'm not going to say it's not uncomfortable and it's not scary. It is, of course, but the reward of being able to, once you do sit with emotions and, work with a psychotherapist like yourself and move through some of these things, you, I can honestly say for myself personally, I mean, just the ability to move past having the same argument with somebody, or having the same thought, recurring negative thoughts, or, whether it's about myself or about a relationship or whatever, it's just awesome. I mean, to be able to move beyond that. So to me, it's so worth, sitting in the uncomfortableness of it, and, working past that.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that too, because that is exactly why people run from it. Oh, but that doesn't feel right. Well, it's supposed to not feel right. I hate to
Right.
tell you, but yeah, not that we want people to be totally overwhelmed or tortured by it. That wouldn't help. But the in between place of just little by little working with that discomfort and layers of it.
Yeah. I almost feel like, back to just the whole feeling thing, sometimes you do have to feel uncomfortable emotions to get
Mhm.
yourself to a place where you can truly feel happy emotions. I feel like a lot of us think we're happy, interesting I use that word think, right? Like in our minds, we think we're happy, there's nothing really wrong with our life, but there's something missing a little bit. And I think it's just that, you don't really experience pure happiness or pure joy until you move through some of these things that, keep getting you stuck and keep having you, think negative thoughts, or keep, like I said before, having the same arguments with someone, that kind of thing.
Exactly. I appreciate that too, because I have actually told a lot of clients who are depressed and struggling that, if they're in a good enough place to do this, which is just maybe sit under a tree, connect to nature, and let yourself drop completely into the depression. And it is possible when you let yourself do that to come out to the other side of joy. It's not people think it's the opposite of joy, but it's not. It's on a continuum.
Hmm.
So, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, and also being okay with it. Like, I think one of the things that I had to realize was that I wasn't allowing myself to be okay with being angry about something. I thought that that was bad. Like, oh, I shouldn't be angry at my significant other. I shouldn't be angry at my mother. And that was like a vicious cycle, because when I wasn't giving myself permission to be angry, I would get more angry.
Exactly. I've been through that too. Yeah, it's the judgment of the feeling that locks it in more, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and it can't flow anymore. It just clogs it up in a way. So, yes, to being able to know that anger and all those things are normal, and then they'll flow and not get stuck,
Yeah.
and we work on getting out of it and seeing things real, because a lot of the extreme emotions or extreme reactions we have and depression, it really does come from a place of seeing illusions, whether it's the beliefs we grew up with about who we are, the negative beliefs, or whether it's, oh, I need to have blah, blah, blah to be happy. Because the bottom line is, based on the sacred tradition wisdom, our happiness is already in here. It's not
Hmm.
out there. And when we have the illusion that, oh, I have to have that lover or that food or that,
Yep.
or drug, whatever it is, um, that just creates also the vicious cycle of negative emotions and struggle and suffering.
Yeah. What really helped me was I was doing a lot of journaling and writing and that kind of thing, and actually writing out, about how I was angry or why I was angry, or, whatever this, even writing about the situation. And that was what kind of clicked to me to say it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be mad about something. It doesn't have to be wrong. And once I did that, it was like, oh, okay, it's okay to have this feeling. I'm going to have this feeling. I'm going to sit with it. And then it's like the feeling loses its power
Hmm.
and you're not angry anymore.
Yeah, journal writing is great. I think that's a beautiful tool. And yeah, and then of course being with it. And then you start that's another way or avenue to understand it, you know. Maybe you don't need the inner child piece. Maybe you just need to understand why you're angry in that moment on a deeper level, and then you can let it go.
Right. Exactly. Awesome. Um, so can you tell us anything else about your practice that you want people to know? And
So, um, well, I just would love, people who are, motivated to heal. I love working with, I also have a group. I should definitely mention the group. The group is, I just love doing this group. And it's really participants who are really not only want to heal, but also develop spiritually.
mhm.
So I offer practices, and it's a beautiful exchange and sharing that we have. And then we do a guided meditation, and we bring in all kinds of creative tools, and people get to share. And it's just deeply inspiring. So anybody who's interested in that, it's also developing a little online community, of course, which is a lot of now, right? Of different
Yeah.
types. And yeah, it's been wonderful to do that and see people grow. And
Awesome. So is that
yeah,
virtual? Do you guys meet
that is
virtually?
virtual. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then,
Um,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to ask you, how how often? Is it weekly, monthly, or?
Well, right now I'm doing a 7-week series, which people commit to the 7 weeks so we can really grow. And I incorporate the chakras into that too. So we actually have images coming from chakras, different for each session, along with doing whatever's needed, whether it's a little inner child work or uh, something like that. But yes, it's that. And then I'm going to do more series like that. And I was doing a drop-in group. Um, for a while as well. I might return to that, maybe a monthly one where people can just come and go as they please. And then I'm also going to revive. I did some training for therapists, and it could be therapists, coaches, other practitioners, anybody who does counseling in the whole heart path therapy approach. And
Oh,
I'm going
that's right. I did want to ask you about that. If we just let's just talk about that for a minute. So
to.
you train other practitioners in heart path therapy. What kind of credentials do they need to be able to do that, and what's the process?
So first I did it with just psychotherapists
Hmm.
or people on their way to being psychotherapists. But I have opened that too, because I feel like anybody who's coaches, anybody who's doing this work of helping other people can jump in. So really any practitioner that is engaged in healing that incorporates counseling and therapeutic ideas, which is almost any practitioner if they're really
Right.
holistic, right?
Yep.
So yeah, so I have opened that. I was getting continuing education credits for the licensed people for a
Hmm.
while in Connecticut. So
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. So, how can people learn more about you? Whether just give us information as far as whether you want to send them to your website or if you want to give any contact information, how people can get in touch with you.
great, thank you. Progressivepsychotherapy.com is the website. My phone number I'll just give is 860-995-3457. There's also a toll-free one on the website which goes to that
Hmm.
phone number. And yeah, those are probably the best ways actually of getting in touch with me. I do have an email, Debra Franklin at progressivepsychotherapy.com, but phone is usually the faster way of getting in touch. So
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, I'm sure that people will be reaching out to learn more. Like you said, people can go to your website, progressivepsychotherapy.com. And this podcast will live on our website, naturalnutmeg.com. And we also send it out via e-blast and post on social media as well. So thanks for all the great information today, Deborah. It was a pleasure to have you on. And hope everybody will reach out to you and learn more.
thank you, Diane. I enjoyed this as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.